The following is a special presentation from 11 Alive News. Up next on The Reveal.
I am a transgender female.
And she wants her public insurance to pay for her transition surgeries.
Health insurance paying for that? No.
Cashless bonds were designed to help the poor, but is the program creating even more problems?
The goal of the criminal justice system isn't charity, it's justice. And that justice is missing in Atlanta.
Our months-long investigation reveals a decade of sexual misconduct complaints against a university police officer.
Why does it take so many voices to scream so loud before anybody hears anything?
Fulton County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
And the cost of a broken 911 system is measured in lives lost, but there's another cost, measured in dollars.
I mean, how many lives could they be saving if they just would turn it on?
From our Midtown studios in Atlanta, The Reveal begins now with investigators Faith Abube and Brendan Keefe.
Welcome to this primetime edition of The Reveal, an investigative show making an impact.
A pending lawsuit against the University of Georgia claims the school discriminates against transgender employees.
The case is part of an emerging legal trend across the nation involving public insurance policies which prohibit paying for transgender health care. While some lawmakers believe it's not an appropriate use of taxpayer money, recent court decisions indicate they may be on the wrong side of history.
I still get about anywhere from 8 to 10 a day.
When Skylar J went to sleep on June 15, 2018, he was barely a blip on social media. The next morning, he had an explosion of followers.
And yeah, I think I'm like a little above like 26,000 right now. I feel bad about not responding to all of them. It's hard.
It happened after the University of Georgia catering manager was featured on the hit Netflix show Queer Eye.
Open up! I'm Bobby. What's going on?
The episode follows Skylar medically transitioning as a transgender man, showing his mastectomy and changing his gender on his driver's license from female to male.
It worked?
Yeah, we got it. Yeah. Those are huge moments in my life that I feel privileged to have documented.
Like many trans people, medically transitioning is a necessary part of treating a condition called gender dysphoria, a diagnosis recognized by the American Psychiatric Association. What is gender dysphoria?
So gender dysphoria basically is the unalignment of your brain sex with your body sex. You know, I see myself and feel myself as masculine. I always have since I was in preschool.
The 31-year-old also takes testosterone as part of his treatments. What would make him feel whole, though, is to get a hysterectomy, which would remove Skylar's uterus.
I don't want to necessarily have to have the hysterectomy, but I have to because after 5 years of being on hormones, your cancer rates in that part of your body actually rise to about 80%. So it's basically like, here's your testosterone with a side of cancer, potentially.
Before scheduling his surgery, he checked with his employee insurance plan at UGA.
My question to my HR was, well, which package would best suit me as a trans employee? And they were like, it doesn't matter which package you choose because the health care you're seeking is not provided.
This past July, Skylar filed a lawsuit claiming the university's transgender healthcare exclusion is discriminatory.
If people are
Noah Lewis is Skylar's attorney.
The question is not why should government pay, it's why is government excluding coverage for medically necessary care.
Over the past year, transgender public employees have filed numerous similar lawsuits across the country. Employees in Wisconsin and Iowa recently won hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages.
The trend is clearly towards removing these exclusions, and there's no reason for them to fight this.
Still, state and local governments continue to prohibit paying for transgender health care, including Georgia.
I am a transgender female.
This past February, Anna Lang asked the Houston County Board of Commissioners to remove its transgender exclusion, Lang is a longtime criminal investigator with the Sheriff's Department. Days before undergoing gender reassignment surgery earlier this year, she discovered the county's insurance policy wouldn't cover it.
I mean, I just didn't wake up, 5 years ago or 3 years ago and go, hey, I think this would be, loads of fun to do. I mean, it's been brutal. Why would anybody choose to want to go through this path?
The commissioners were not swayed by Anna's arguments.
The only thing I will say is there will not be any change made to the health care policy the county currently has, particularly during the course of 2019.
What was your reaction?
Disappointed. Just means that I'm going to have to go that much longer without health care.
Georgia's public insurance policy also prohibits paying for transgender care.
First, it adds the definition of...
And the state lawmaker who arguably holds the most influence to change that has no plans to do so. He's Senator Burt Jones, chairman of the Insurance and Labor Committee.
Health insurance paying for that? No. Health insurance isn't responsible for paying for health insurance is responsible for paying for things that are not foreseen in your future, as far as accidents or illnesses that you might have. So that's not a responsibility of health insurance.
Are you familiar with gender dysphoria?
No.
I'm not shocked, no. I think it shows room for growth for our policymakers, honestly, is that, we're not here trying to tell you that necessarily that you're wrong, just that you're uninformed.
Less than a month after Schuyler filed his lawsuit against UGA, the university gave him an award.
So you got employed the year last year?
Yes.
The same year you filed a lawsuit against your employer?
Yeah.
UGA?
Yeah, it's actually sitting right behind you, the award on the shelf over there. Yeah.
Some irony in that.
I think so too, yes. At the end of the day, this is what is right for my body and the quality of life that I live, not feeling whole and not feeling like I'm my best self or I am the way that I need to be to walk in the world is just as detrimental to my health as not receiving this health care.
So is the Georgia Board of Regents responding to Schuyler's lawsuit?
We requested an interview, but a spokesperson says it does not comment on pending litigation.
Andy, dozens of state insurance programs essentially ban transgender health coverage. What about federal employees?
The federal government does cover some transgender health care, and at the moment that includes members of the military. But the Trump administration is currently being sued because it is attempting to remove all of its transgender individuals from armed forces.
Imagine being arrested for a minor offense and then having to sit in jail for months because you can't afford bond. Last year, the city of Atlanta changed the law to release most offenders with only a signature and a promise to return to face the charges. It appears a man's word doesn't mean as much as you'd like to think.
What each other has. Donna Smitherman sits in clear view of the Atlanta Detention Center as she talks about her arrests.
I don't want back in there.
Donna and her husband have always had jobs and a roof over their head until last year.
We wound up setting up a tent over by the zoo. We had all our stuff in a duffel bag, and we woke up one night with two men with sticks hitting us, and they took our duffel bag.
No ID, no cell phone, no clothes. So Donna became one of those people you see begging by the freeway. So what did your sign say?
Homeless and hungry, please help.
It was that sign that led to her arrest 3 times. But twice, she was able to get out immediately on a signature bond, thanks to the city's new bail policy. But each time, Donna ended up FTA, failure to appear.
Why didn't you go to court?
Because honestly, living out there, you don't keep up with the time.
They could not afford to pay bail.
Still, Tiffany Roberts with the Southern Center for Human Rights says Donna is just the kind of person bail reform is supposed to help. It was this group that led the campaign for change.
I think it was a courageous first step.
The idea is to prevent people who can't afford to pay bond from having to wait days to see a judge before they're released. But now it appears it is the court that is waiting on them.
This is the first and only court of this type, the only courtroom in this state
We spent a morning in Judge Ward's courtroom where 5 days a week he hears nothing but FTA cases.
Beyond this date, if you have a citation, come to court.
According to the Atlanta Municipal Court, the number of people failing to appear has increased 40% since bond reform started.
We don't believe that the city could say with certainty that that rate is related to bail reform.
The court would agree the problem is getting worse for many reasons, but Tiffany can't prove signature bonds aren't one of them. Her group has made several open records requests to get the data needed to figure out what is going on.
And what'd you find? Well, we didn't get any of that data.
Breaking news right now, the city of Atlanta's computers are being held hostage.
The city says the cyber attack, which happened just weeks after bail reform started, impeded its ability to collect that data. But there is no indication the city ever had a plan in place to track the impact before the mayor signed it into law.
And it is now official.
Instead, we have learned the jail doesn't track who returns to court, and the court doesn't track how a defendant is released from jail. So we manually cross-referenced each and every person arrested and then released on a signature bond with the court system to build the database ourselves.
I would love to see your data.
We took out the cases the court told us were impacted by the cyber attack and still found 30% of the people released on a signature bond from jail have yet to show up in court. The most common offenses: driving on a suspended license, possession of marijuana, and theft by shoplifting.
The goal of the criminal justice system isn't charity, it's justice. And that justice is missing in Atlanta.
Councilman Michael Julian Bond says lawmakers, eager to show support for the new mayor, voted unanimously for the measure. But he now believes it was a mistake.
Victims have been left out of this entire conversation.
Tiffany says critics confuse the purpose of bail with sentencing, and that the city could reduce its FTA rate with better communication, not only with defendants on when they need to be in court, but with the city's own departments. Indeed, we found 24 cases where the jail made an arrest, but the court has no record of it. And the court isn't always holding those that fail to show up accountable.
Anytime you fail to appear in court, a warrant is issued for your arrest.
But that doesn't mean the judge signs it. Without that signature, police are never told. We found about 55% of the FTAs we studied never became active warrants. Benjamin Rucker was arrested by MARTA police for trying to hitch a ride on a train without paying. He never showed up in court. But the warrant wasn't signed, so when Walmart accused Rucker of trying to steal 4 watches, Atlanta police simply wrote him a citation. Rucker hasn't gone to court on that charge either. We tried to find some of those who had skipped their court date.
Give me a first and last name.
The man accused of setting a fire at this Checkers gave police a fake address.
I don't know who this guy is, or he's never lived here. I've been here 10 years.
Others on the list were homeless and had no address at all. People like Donna. It was on her 3rd visit to jail that she asked about the city's pre-arrest diversion program, or PAD.
They took me off the streets, put me in housing, clothing, provided food.
And once she finally gets the paperwork needed for a new ID, she also hopes to get a job.
It's kind of like a domino effect. When it rains, it pours, and finally I found a ray of sunshine.
Well, this was Keisha Lance Bottom's first initiative as mayor. We asked repeatedly for an interview, but she would not talk with us for our story.
To be clear, Rebecca, these are non-violent offenses and essentially city ordinance violations, right?
For the most part, yes. But if the overall argument is that these really aren't serious charges, then the question is, why arrest them at all? Or why not just invest in programs like the pre-arrest diversion program to kind of deal with some of the underlying issues?
And hard to imagine Atlanta being the only city with an FTA problem.
There are some cities that have had success using text messaging as a way to remind defendants. The council did pass a bill to study that and other options, but they have yet to fund it.
Coming up on The Reveal.
He started telling me about the opportunities that were available for me on the campus, you know, if I slept with him.
Oh, so he was that direct?
Yeah.
A campus police sergeant accused of being a sexual predator. Welcome back to The Reveal. It was last fall when Fort Valley State University in Middle Georgia made national headlines after several top administration officials were charged in a pimping and prostitution scandal. As you're about to learn, that's not the only sex scandal on campus. Our months-long investigation unravels a decade of sexual misconduct allegations against a university police sergeant.
Sergeant Bryant is well respected.
Performance reviews going back 10 years
Sergeant Bryant always displays a team spirit.
paint a picture of decorated police sergeant Wilbur Bryant
is always willing to assist others
that would make any boss proud.
It exemplifies all the characteristics of a leader.
By all appearances, the veteran police officer is highly regarded on the Fort Valley State University campus.
He exhibits outstanding customer service,
exceeds expectations.
He was part of the university president's security detail and in charge of the school's fire safety program. That's how Shanae Hall's 18-year-old daughter told her she first saw Sergeant Bryant.
And he had already seen her at a fire drill, so he had his eyes on her from the beginning.
A few weeks later, Sergeant Bryant arrested the freshman for fighting with classmates on campus.
He pulled up his file, Googled himself and said, "Did you see who I am? Do you see this title? Do you see what I make? I can protect you. As long as you're with me, nothing will ever happen."
Hall says Sergeant Bryant found her daughter's phone number on the police report and initiated a personal relationship.
Her first thing was, "Oh, this officer is really nice. He's trying to help me with my case, and he's, going to help me, get a job on campus, and he's looking out for me."
That was February 2018. By spring break, the 52-year-old veteran police officer ramped up what Fort Valley State University's own investigation found to be inappropriate contact with a female student.
Because she was an athlete, she had to stay and train. All the other students are gone. So he goes up, swipes his badge to get into the dorm facility, and then comes up to her room. Then he knocked on the door, invited himself in, and just started explaining, that they basically should be a couple, and what he can offer.
Sergeant Bryant was still in full uniform, service weapon by his side, when according to court documents, he allowed himself into Hall's daughter's dorm room without permission. The university refuses to release the video showing Bryant walking in.
When she was sitting down on her bed, she said he walked over and her feet were crossed, and he put his penis on her feet. That's when he came in and was like trying to get a kiss. What do you do? Do you run? Do you scream? There's no one there to listen.
It would be a freshman student's word against a veteran police officer. So Hall's daughter decided to record the phone calls.
Everybody now, you got some freak inside of them. You just gotta find a way to pull it out of them.
That's Sergeant Bryant on the phone with the 18-year-old freshman.
Why can't I satisfy you in that area? To make love to you would be great.
This goes on for about an hour.
When you walked in my office, something told you this man important.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm willing to put my job on the line for you, what that tell you?
True.
That tell you that I'm really into you. It's not a joke. It's just like coming to your room. Number one, you got cameras on the hallway, so if you go back and pull the camera, they see what room I went to. You follow me?
The good thing is she had the wherewithal to understand that this person's not trying to protect you. This person's not trying to help you. He's trying to sleep with you, period. And she was smart enough to pick up her phone and record the conversation.
You follow me?
Hall turned that recording over to attorney Kenneth Lewis, who's now representing the family against Bryant, the university, and the Board of Regents in a lawsuit.
I think part of the reason that this culture and that Officer Bryant was so emboldened to say the things he said on that tape was he's never had any repercussions.
Sergeant Bryant and his attorney declined to comment on the allegations, and both Fort Valley State University and the Board of Regents declined our repeated requests for an interview on how they handled a decade of complaints against Sergeant Bryant. Our investigation has uncovered Hall's daughter's written claim to the university is just one of a list of sexual assault, inappropriate contact, and harassment allegations against Sergeant Bryant at the Fort Valley State University Campus Police Department.
I didn't expect the atmosphere that I saw.
Kelly Williams also made a written complaint against Bryant about a decade ago.
He asked me to post at campus faculty housing.
Sergeant Bryant asked her that because she was the new campus security officer.
I called on the radio saying I'm out of gas. He said, okay, don't worry about it, I'll come pick you up. And he started telling me about the opportunities that were available for me on the campus, if I slept with him.
Oh, so he was that direct?
Yeah. And I thought all of that sounded really great. And then he started pulling my clothes off, and I was saying no.
Right there and then in the car?
Yes. I felt, he was about to rape me, and I was like, we were like fighting for my clothes. And I was like, please, no, I'm on my period, just stop. And that's the only reason why he stopped.
Sergeant Bryant stopped that night, but Williams says he used his authority over and over again to continue a non-consensual sexual relationship with her. The school's internal review files show, since Williams reported her case, half a dozen other co-workers and students have reported Bryant to the school for varying degrees of sexual misconduct.
I think any one of them would get you or I fired, just one.
And there were 8?
At 8 that were reported, and certainly there's an indication that many more were unreported.
None of the sexual misconduct complaints against Sergeant Bryant were ever mentioned in his annual reviews.
Always willing to go that extra mile.
Instead, for 10 years, bosses praised him for his work ethic and promoted him, while women on campus, students, and his own staff complained repeatedly.
If my children were attending Fort Valley, I would be gravely concerned, particularly if they were young women.
Why does Officer Bryant get 7 years or a decade before my daughter is the one that comes forward and says, this is enough? Like, why does it take so many voices to scream so loud before anybody hears anything?
And the law has now caught up with Officer Bryant. He was booked into the Peach County Jail and charged with 3 felonies, including violating his oath of office. The GBI still has an open investigation into him.
Has the university done anything about this?
They actually allowed Officer Bryant to resign instead of firing him, and that, according to his alleged victims, is another slap in the face.
Up next. 4 years after an 11 Alive investigation revealed the nation's 911 system was broken, how delays are still costing lives. Right now we're sitting in the city of Atlanta. You reached 911 in another county.
Right. How did that happen?
Hold on 1 second. Let me transfer you to Fulton.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.
Last month, the nation marked the first anniversary of the massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. Every single 911 call from that tragedy went to a neighboring police department that could not dispatch Parkland officers. Parkland chose to send all of its mobile 911 calls to the next city, which handles only fire and ambulance services for Parkland. That required transferring calls to the sheriff's office, costing precious seconds. But the calls would have gone to the wrong 911 center anyway, because they hit a cell tower across the city line. How could this happen years after we first revealed this deadly flaw in the nation's 911 system? Because cell phone calls to 911 are still routed by the tower address, not the caller's location. It happens every day, including right here in Atlanta.
The plane just turned upside down and hit the ground and blew up.
It didn't land, it crashed. I mean, there was a big fireball and everything.
You better send some ambulances and fire trucks. It's all on fire. I'm telling you, it's on fire right now.
The voices of those who tried to help echo in this city park where all 4 people on board a private jet were killed.
You can see where the tree is sheared off, that the plane just went right through it.
I saw it. It just turned upside down and hit the ground. Oh my God, I'm sure the people are dead. It exploded.
He knew he was crashing. He did the best thing he could do to save the most amount of lives. He saved my life.
Deborah Bounds called 911 that rain-soaked day last December.
Cobb County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Donald Lee Howell and Fulton Industrial. A plane just turned upside down and hit the ground and exploded.
Okay, all right, hold on 1 second. Let me get Fulton on the line.
Right now we're sitting in the city of Atlanta. You reached 911 in another county.
Right. How did that happen?
Hold on 1 second. Let me transfer you to Fulton.
I didn't know that someone was going to transfer me to somebody else.
Hey, Fulton, it's Kyle with the plane crash.
You could have called anyone because the people you reached when you first called 911 couldn't help you. They had to call somebody else.
Right. They had to put me on hold and transfer me. 911.
Donald Lee Hallowell and Fulton Industrial Boulevard. A plane just turned upside down and hit the ground and blew up.
While the wreckage was burning, multiple dispatchers were transferring emergency calls back and forth between Cobb, Fulton, and Atlanta 911. Some callers ended up talking to all three 911 centers.
We just had a plane crash.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get Fulton County on the line with us, okay? Fulton County 911. What's the address of your emergency? Fulton County. This is Cobb County with the transfer. I'm sorry. Hold on, Cobb. Sir, where are you?
I'm not sure of the address. There was a plane crash over at Fulton Industrial and Hallowell Parkway by 285.
Okay, Atlanta, that's going to be APD if it's on Hollowell Parkway. Hold on, so I'm sorry. Let me get you over to the right jurisdiction. Hold on for me.
You have reached the City of Atlanta 911. Your call is very important to us. Please do not hang up. The next available operator will answer your call.
2 emergency callers were transferred from a live dispatcher at one 911 center to a recording at another.
I'm trying to make it verify. I'm sorry, sir. Fulton Industrial, and what was the other car street?
Atlanta Ballfield. It's a park, right?
Oh, okay. It's gonna. Okay, give me 1 second. I want to transfer you to the City of Atlanta. It's going to be on them.
You have reached the City of Atlanta 911. Your call is very important to us. Please do not hang up. The next available operator will answer your call.
All of the callers knew exactly where the jet had crashed. Here, English Park in the City of Atlanta. But the problem wasn't locating them or their cell phones. Because of the way 911 calls are routed, the system didn't see them here. At least 3 911 callers were picked up by this cell tower in Cobb County, so they were routed to Cobb 911 and had to be transferred. Some calls were picked up by cell towers in Fulton County, answered by Fulton 911, and had to be transferred to Atlanta. At least 1 caller was picked up by an Atlanta cell tower and reached the right 911 center. But the Atlanta dispatcher mistakenly believed the crash was in Fulton County's jurisdiction and transferred it to the wrong 911 center, which had to transfer the call back to Atlanta.
Fulton County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
Atlanta with a transfer by request. Go ahead, sir.
A plane just came down and landed. I mean, it didn't land, it crashed. I mean, there was a big fireball and everything. Oh, and there's another explosion just went off over there.
So that's what the City of Atlanta says. Give me 1 second.
Operator 2953, what's the address of your emergency?
Hey, Atlanta, this is Fulton County. I have a call on the line who is advising that a plane came down. He said he's near Hollowell Parkway, and
we got it.
When it came down, there was a huge fireball.
It's just a miracle that more planes don't crash taking off from right there.
And if there's another plane crash here, the same 911 delays and transfers will happen again, because Fulton County Airport is wedged in the corner of 3 different jurisdictions, and 911 calls are still routed by the cell tower address, not the caller's location.
We actually exposed this problem 4 years ago, and it's still not fixed. Is that frustrating, given that you were reaching the wrong 911 center?
I mean, it's horrible. I don't understand how you could reach the wrong 911 center. How can you be put on hold by 911 when it's an emergency situation?
And it happens every day.
Right.
All right, what's your address?
Coming up, the government promised fixes, so why are people still lost on the line?
Does the technology exist to route the call based on the caller's location and do it quickly right now?
The technology does exist, yes.
Our groundbreaking investigative series, 911 Lost on the Line, first revealed a national public safety crisis. That was 4 years ago, but 911 is still broken. When you pick up the phone during a life and death emergency, you may reach a 911 center that can't send you help. Why are phone companies and the government taking so long to fix a problem that's still costing lives?
I'm in a car in a lake. Where? She's in a lake and her doors weren't open.
I'm losing it very quickly. Give me the address one more time. It's not working.
Chanel Anderson spent her last breaths telling 911 where to find her submerged SUV. She knew exactly where she was trapped, in a Cherokee County pond, but her 911 call hit a cell tower in Fulton County and was routed to the wrong 911 center. The resulting confusion cost 19 minutes and Chanel's life.
Yeah, we got one vehicle. It looks like it's all the way underwater right now.
We first revealed this problem so long ago, the national article about 911 failures has already turned yellow from age.
Today, we still route your 911 call not on where you're standing, what jurisdiction you're in. We route your call based on what cell tower you're connected to.
Chuck Spalding runs Palm Beach County 911 in Florida,
911 emergency,
where every day his 16 dispatch centers answer calls from and for several other jurisdictions.
All right, what's your address?
Transfers are so common in 911 centers across the nation, every dispatcher has a screen with multiple hot button transfer options.
It's Jupiter with a transfer.
My daughter stopped breathing. I dial 911. The last thing I really want to hear is, hold on, I need to transfer you.
You can't fix this as a county 911 director, right?
No, not at all.
I mean, this is in the hands of either the federal government or the carriers and handset manufacturers or all of the above.
Right.
We brought the problem to the FCC in Washington 4 years ago, after Chanel Anderson's death, and right after the FCC's order requiring phone companies to locate 911 calls from cell phones more often and more accurately.
Nowhere in this more than 100-page order is there a call for routing by the phone's location versus the tower's location. Doesn't the capability exist?
That would not provide a consistent enough lowest common denominator.
Things have changed dramatically at the FCC. This 2018 federal report cites our investigation and finally proposes fixing the problem. 911 misroutes are not occasional or isolated and in fact occur frequently, on occasion with deadly consequences.
So if we could be picking those up off the phone instead of a tower and shaving those few seconds between the neighbor on this side of the street and the neighbor on that side of the street, it's a win-win for everybody.
The FCC is now on board with this, but previously they were saying, you know, it was almost like the perfect was the enemy of the good. We don't want to get involved in guessing. We want it to be 100% right all the time, even if it goes to the wrong place. Now the FCC, they do want to do location-based routing, and that sounds like it's something that would help you if it was possible.
I think absolutely it would help us.
You're looking for an officer?
The FCC says shaving a minute off response times nationwide would save 10,000 lives a year.
Does the technology exist to route the call based on the caller's location and do it quickly right now?
The technology does exist, yes.
In fact, it could already be in your cell phone. The phone companies just haven't turned it on.
If they have the technology, they need to implement the technology because of all the lives they could be saving. I mean, seconds count when there's an emergency.
Deborah Bounds called in this jet crash near Fulton County Airport.
I saw it. It just turned upside down and hit the ground. Oh my God. I'm sure the people were dead. It exploded.
Okay, one moment, ma'am. One moment.
She reached the wrong 911 center and they had to transfer her emergency call.
The technology to properly route the call is actually in your phone right now. From our original story, inventors here in Atlanta came up with a solution. It's in every single model of your brand of phone for the last 3 models, but the carriers haven't turned it on.
Why aren't they using it if they have it? I mean, how many lives could they be saving if they just would turn it on?
Next time it might be your life on the line.
Right.
Some phone companies propose fixing the 911 routing problem as soon as possible, according to their filings with the FCC. But virtually all the phone companies suggest waiting for something called Next Generation 911. The overhauled system promises to bring video and other high-tech advancements to 911 centers nationwide.
It's more important that I send the call to the right place with the location than it is somebody sending a video into the center.
They were talking about Next Generation 911 4 years ago when we first did this investigation.
Why are we going to sit around and wait for some milestone potentially to happen when it's all next-gen systems are already being deployed across the country?
I don't want to be sitting here 4 years from now talking about the future when 911 will actually be able to find me and route the call to the correct 911 center.
We're fixing location, let's take that location and let's fix routing.
That's just incredible. So what's next for fixing 911?
You know, Faith, there are a lot of technologies currently in the pipeline, none of them currently implemented. We've been on this story for 4 years already. We'll stay on it until we get 911 fixed once and for all.
2 years after an 11 Alive investigation, a major player in the sperm bank industry changes its policies after we revealed this man with an undisclosed mental illness fathered 36 children.
Never did I imagine that I would have paid to have a felon with multiple debilitating, inheritable mental health issues.
A Georgia sperm bank that allowed a man with mental illness to father dozens of children is overhauling its policies.
The move is the result of an 11 Alive investigation, revealing the company did not share his mental health history with mothers before they used his sperm to father their children. And now one of those children has become a critic of the industry that gave him life.
I was just looking for info on who he was.
When this teen, who we'll call John, turned 14, he went online to see what he could learn about his donor, 9623. He'd read the profile provided by Zytex, but wanted to know more.
At this age, you're trying to find out what makes you, you.
He admittedly didn't expect to find much. But by then, the internet was filled with stories about the sperm donor, diagnosed bipolar with schizoaffective disorder, at the center of nearly a dozen lawsuits.
You know, there's a genetic component to schizophrenia, which is, for me at least, really terrifying.
According to the National Institute of Mental Health, schizophrenia can be hereditary. 10% of the donor's offspring could be diagnosed. According to court records, there are at least 36 kids born using his sperm, 17 girls and 19 boys. They are spread out over England, Canada, and the United States. John is one of the oldest.
A lot of times in the moment, I'm like, oh man, why do I have to know this?
His donor was allowed to write whatever he wanted on his application. No one checked to see if it was true, and turns out it wasn't. Now John believes the fits of depression and rage that have left marks on the walls and doors in his home are proof of the pain he has had to endure because of it.
What's going on? Why is it like this? We tried out so many medications, and I feel like if we just had that knowledge, it would have been so much easier.
Angie Collins, a mother in Canada, was one of the first parents to raise red flags about donor 9623 and Zytex's vetting process.
Never did I imagine that I would have paid to have a felon with multiple debilitating, inheritable mental health issues.
Collins learned after her son was born that at the time donor 9623 donated, he was a college dropout and had yet to earn his bachelor's degree. Despite claiming on his application he was already working towards his PhD. He had also donated the sperm that gave her son life less than 2 months after getting out of jail for burglary. It was in those court filings information about his mental health emerged.
We're all human, we all make mistakes. He's made many. The company has made even more.
While Zytex tells parents up front they do not verify the accuracy of the information given by donors, they also boast a rigorous qualifications procedure that selects less than 5% of applicants.
And I said, oh my gosh, you know, you're just going to be the perfect sperm donor.
In an audio interview Zytex recorded for prospective parents, the company praises the donor repeatedly. Even he shares why he continued donating sperm for more than 10 years.
I'm helping to give parents who are very eager to have a child, you know, one of the greatest gifts in the world, you know, their child. And I can't deny the power of that.
But when we tried to talk with the donor in 2017, he refused to answer questions about that help or the concerns families are now facing. Schizophrenia is usually not diagnosed until late teens or early adulthood, so all they can do now is wait. You feel like you play no role in this?
I feel like your part to play in this is null and void.
Because all of the cases against Zytex were dismissed or settled out of court, the donor has never had to testify or explain why he falsified information on his application. While the company also denies any wrongdoing, it announced in March that it is making changes. It will no longer accept anonymous donors and has expanded its genetic testing to cover more than 280 conditions. It will conduct criminal background checks on new donors and place a cap on the number of children that can be born by any one donor. John says it's a start.
It's literally people's lives and children, but it's super unregulated.
Zytec says it is pledging unprecedented transparency, but when I called asking for more information, the company refused to talk with me, and our requests for an on-camera interview remain unanswered.
Rebecca, still, the changes they've proposed, they seem promising, don't they?
And they are. Families say they're excited, but remember, these changes only impact one sperm bank, Zytec, and the FDA does not inspect these for the types of tests that they're doing or any of these other changes, so they can't be verified. That's why we're really taking them at their word.
When we return, a look behind the curtain of investigative reporting and why we do it.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.
Hi, Rebecca Lindstrom with 11 Alive News.
Are they all lying? When did you first learn about the intentional freezing of a 13-year-old boy?
Why, in the name of transparency, won't Gwinnett County let us see these videos?
Is there a reason why you won't talk with me?
What are you hiding?
The reveal is impact investigations.
There was no attempt to cover this up or to hide this.
Why mute the body cameras then?
That's a good question.
Did he just lock the door on us?
Investigations that delve deeper. It's what we do, it's who we are.
Don't you think the taxpayers deserve to know that this is happening?
The Reveal is a 30-minute investigative news magazine show where we reveal what's happening in your community in a much deeper, meaningful way than what you typically see in a newscast.
The Reveal is different than anything you're going to see anywhere else on local TV news. We are out there every day representing one thing, and that's the truth.
I always tell my friends this is a show I would watch even if I wasn't a part of the show, and it's for many reasons. Not just because of the great journalism that we do on the show, the reporting, the hours and hours of reporting that goes into this and verifying all the facts, but also the storytelling, how we put all those facts together and make people care.
You're taking what's happened in the daily news and then you're going a step further. You are asking the questions why and how. Questions that reporters ask all the time but maybe don't feel like they have the time to figure it out or the resources to figure it out. And so we're taking those very important questions and we're doing the hard work needed to actually get those answers.
I feel like I'm the luckiest man in local television because I have a great team of investigative journalists. Alrighty, quiet on the set, let's go, let's go.
The executive producer of The Reveal is a person that worked in special projects at CNN. I've been in the industry more than 40 years.
Someone says, well, why not X or why not Z? And then the next thing you know, out of Brendan or Rebecca or Andy or Faith's mouth is that question. It's a privilege to work with so many people that are passionate about doing the same quality of work.
When you sit back and you watch The Reveal, you can see that dedication and the passion that's poured into the whole storytelling and the whole reporting process.
Not only because we're telling different kinds of stories, but we're telling them in a way that no one else is telling them.
Our team has won well over 100 regional Emmy Awards, multiple national Murrow Awards, multiple Peabody Awards. Why does that matter? Why does it matter how many awards a team has won? Because this tells you this is the very cream of the crop. There isn't a weak link in the chain.
This is definitely a dream team. It's just unbelievable, the different reporters that have come here with many, many years of investigative news experience.
We dive deeper. We have the time, we have the space to get into a story and really look at all aspects and look at all angles.
They are all investigative stories. They are human interest stories. They are human-driven stories.
It's more than just the issue itself. It's stories about people.
These are the type of stories we do. Stories not just about the people, but also getting results for the people.
But the story wouldn't be anything if I didn't have the person behind the numbers or the person behind that information to help bring it to life.
We don't work for 11 Alive. We work for the viewer. We work for the story.
The investigations that I get most excited about are the ones no one has ever heard before. And I think that's what this show brings, is the stories that you've never heard before, told in a way that you've also never seen before, in a real, in-depth, meaningful way.
It's local TV that you won't see anywhere else.
Investigations that have impact.
Impact investigations that affect everybody.
The whole point is empowerment. We want to give people the information they need to decide for themselves whether this is a concern, whether this needs change, whether this needs more transparency.
This is the kind of meaty journalism that I've been wanting to do my entire career.
There is no greater calling of journalism than to actually influence change to make our community better.
That's a wrap.
Tune in on Sundays.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.
11 Alive is launching its first ever podcast delving into two notorious cold cases. In 1965, Mary Shotwell Little vanished from Lenox Square Mall. Less than 2 years later, Diane Shields was found brutally murdered in the trunk of her own car. Investigative journalist Jessica Knoll is working to uncover whether these cases are connected in her 7-chapter podcast series, 5 Roses.
You've been watching The Reveal, a show dedicated to impact investigations. Thanks for joining us.
Our normal time is every Sunday at 6. We'll see you then.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.